yourself what happened in 2020, what did you not do well, which you could improve on in 2021, and what are the challenges and goals that you set for yourself and how you're going to achieve them. Now, just want to start off with what I see as the trends that are taking place in Africa in 2021. A lot of stuff I'm sure you've read in the press or you've seen it online. The first trend that I have observed is that there's beginning to be an awareness of what I call resource nationalism. That is African people wanting to take control of their resources. This ranges from one country to the other, but the general direction, as I see it, is that there is now an awareness to say, we as an African people must control our natural resources. We must control our education. We must control our health. Just a few examples of what I have seen happening lately. In the last few days, the president of Ghana was announcing that instead of Ghana exporting cocoa or cacao to Switzerland, where it is converted into chocolate, why not convert that cacao in Ghana and produce chocolate, which can be exported to other countries? That is a major change in attitude. And I think if that can be adopted by other African countries, where you make an analysis of what are the resources that you have, the ones that you create yourselves, such as what we grow in our fields, what crops we have in our that grow well in our countries, instead of selling them as raw materials. For instance, many countries grow soybeans. Soybean can be converted into 101 different products. You can convert it into soybean oil. You can convert it into feedstock. You can convert it into many other products. Now, rather than selling this soybean as a raw material for somebody else's factory, why not grow it and create factories that will process that oil soybean into products that you can use locally and also export them. Some of the countries that had set up the trend way back, but others are catching up. For instance, Botswana used to be Africa's largest producer of diamonds. And De Beers, as some of you may know, is the world's largest diamond processor. They don't own diamond mines themselves, but they came to Africa, took control of the diamond resources. Unfortunately, as an African people, we did not understand the concept of giving somebody rights to mine minerals. So because we had inherited these Western laws, they come to our government and say, okay, I want to have mineral rights to such and such an area. And then they'll say, okay, how much area do you need? They say, okay, in terms of our prospectors, we need about 100 hectares. That's where these resources that we want are located in. Now, so for Botswana, they gave those kind of rights to De Beers. Same thing applied to Zimbabwe, where we also have diamonds. Something applied in South Africa, where they have diamonds. And also even in the West African countries, where the diamonds are, you find that they are not mined and processed by the local people. One of the reasons is that the trade in diamonds is controlled from Belgium. I mean, that is the biggest center for it. And then, of course, other centers that have come up, places like Israel, Switzerland, and so forth. But what the Botswana government then did a few years ago was say, okay, De Beers, you cannot have 100% control of our diamonds. If you want to have access to our diamonds, there are several things you have to do. One is to set up a processing operation in Botswana, train local Botswana citizens how to process and cut diamonds and polish diamonds and so forth, so that you can now export polished, cut and polished diamonds wherever you have to, and then you have a sharing of profits. Something happening with the Zimbabwe. We discovered much larger resources of diamonds in Zimbabwe about 10 years or so ago. But because we had learned the lessons of what Botswana had done, so we don't have any exclusive rights to any foreign company to come and mine diamonds in Zimbabwe and process them and export them. But they go into joint venture with local companies. So this trend, I see it happening slowly, but at the same time, the most important thing is developing that consciousness of accepting and understanding that the resources belong to us as an African people, and we must be in control and in charge of those resources. And then the other trend I'm seeing is that with this COVID-19, if we have to wait to receive medications and vaccines from the Western countries or from other countries, they are going to put us at the bottom of their priorities. So President Magufuli of Tanzania of late has been talking of, let's develop our African herbals or medicines to treat the diseases that you are confronted with. Okay, I mean, before the white men came, we didn't have hospitals, didn't have clinics, but we had our medicine that we relied on. And the most important thing that we depended on was that we did not eat poisoned food the way we are doing now. Most of our food was organic. It did not have chemicals, it did not have pesticides. Therefore, we did not have the kinds of diseases that we are experiencing now as a result of eating the herbicides and the pesticides and so forth. On one hand, the pesticides and herbicides are supposed to solve one problem, that is weed control or pest control. But during our time before the white people came, we understood what integrated agriculture was. You know, we knew how to mix different crops together, which were at a symbiotic relationship with each other, what you call permaculture today, okay? That way, we avoided ingesting the kind of chemicals that we are doing, the incidence of prostate cancer, lung cancer, stomach, all kinds of diseases that we are experiencing now. It's as a result of what we are made to believe is the food for civilized people. And yet we're really being taught how to kill ourselves. You know, you pay money to eat something that is going to kill you. I think that is very, very a dangerous thing that we're forced to. So the trend that I'm also seeing is that of trying to understand how do we cure ourselves? You know, how do we minimize dependence of getting medications or medicines from outside of the continent, but we must be able to do it to develop them ourselves in Africa. A lot of research is going on, looking at local herbs, local plants, to see how they can, improve on our health and so forth. If you go to some of the supermarkets here in the US now, you'll find that there's, moringa. I'm sure moringa, many people know that moringa grows in many different parts of Africa. Our people knew and understood the value of moringa from the leaves, from the roots, from the bark, and so forth. And then when the white people came to Africa, they saw how beneficial those plants were. They took them, they came and they tested them in the Western countries, and they found that the medicinal values they have. Now you're going to supermarkets, you'll find, that there are a lot of African herbal medicine, the teas, rooibos coming from South Africa, moringa tea coming from every part of Africa. It just depends on who is promoting the export of those local herbs to the Western countries. So I think this is the interesting trend, of looking at how we can look after ourselves. There's also a lot of research work going on to try to develop an African vaccine for the COVID-19. I know there are scientists in Nigeria are doing that work. The African Union Disease Control is also coordinating some work being done, to develop an African vaccine, also developing African dependency on its own resources as far as health is concerned. Like all the other countries that have advanced, in technology and so forth, they had to learn from others and also copy. I remember some time back, the Japanese were very wherever you saw Japanese, they would be carrying a camera. Before everybody caught on to why were they carrying these cameras, apparently what was happening, they would go into various factories, they take pictures and photographs of whatever they see. When they go back to Japan, they start to analyze what they saw. If it was a gadget that they don't have in Japan, then they started, seeing, how can they create that machine and do whatever it is doing for the West and so forth. And then after a while, when the West caught up to what the Japanese were doing, then they started limiting, them from taking photographs anywhere they went to and so forth. So I think as an African people, we need to be doing the same thing too, that we learn and understand, what others are doing. We've got many African scientists actually working in every corporation that you can think of, whether it is Microsoft, it could be the petroleum industry, it could be anywhere. So for all that knowledge that they are accumulating, they should be able to come back to Africa and say, okay, let's establish a petroleum processing refinery plant in Nigeria or in Angola, wherever, Africa, in a few years' time, I think will be one of the largest producers of petroleum products or petroleum oil, because we have a lot of resources in that field. There are still a lot of countries which have oil, but we have not yet assessed how much that oil is. At one point, we used to think that all the oil was in West Africa, or it was just in Nigeria and Angola. But with the time, we now find that the whole of the West African coast is full of oil. Every other country, whether it is, Zaire, it is the DRC, Central African Republic, all along the West coast. And then the same thing is happening in East Africa. You used to have oil, Egypt is one of the few oil producers in Africa, but right now we've discovered oil in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda, then in Mozambique. They are very huge. Oil potential there is being explored. In Zimbabwe is the same thing. The border between Zimbabwe and Mozambique, they are also prospecting for oil, but the chances that there will be oil there are still very much greater. So we have a lot of, Africa is going to be the future of the world because we have all the natural resources. And those resources are so much that as much as the Western countries and other countries have tried to exploit our resources, but they're just so much, they've just scraped the surface as far as what is there. But the most important thing is that we have to take control ourselves, our educational system must not be based on how best you can be employed by Microsoft or by Shell or by Google and so forth. It must be based on how do you create a Microsoft that addresses the problems of Africa? How do you create a Pfizer that creates solutions for the problems that we have in Africa? Given that there are 1.4 billion people of us, that provides still the largest market that you can think of. So there's no point to redirect our education and knowledge in terms of serving other continents or other countries instead of creating solutions for what we are faced with. So my message this week or today is that let's look at the trends that are taking place in Africa. I just gave a few examples, for what I've seen happening lately, and I'm sure many other countries are going to start looking at the products they are exporting as raw materials and force those countries that have been and companies that have been importing these raw materials to say, no, I think you have to start processing these things in our countries so that we create jobs for our people. And also because the market is in Africa, it doesn't make sense to get the raw material, you process them in Europe, and then you come back and sell them to us for 10 times the value of the raw materials that you took away. This is again another way in which wealth is being transferred from Africa to the developed countries, and they look at us, well, Africa is so poor and so forth, and yet these people, they are rich out of our resources and out of our labor and sweat because they underpay us. One of the things they find important, interesting and important in trying to get raw materials from Africa is that they get them for a very, very cheap price. Then when they process them, they sell them at 100 times the value that they got. Well, that is what I have. If there are any questions that you want to follow up, I'll be very glad to address them. So that's what I got for you today. Okay, Wafula, can you take over?
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Mapondera. Yeah, I guess we can move on to, because I'm checking on the group, on the chat section, we don't have questions right now. So I think we can move on to the country speakers. Then after the speakers, maybe we can check again to see if there are any questions.
Okay.
All right. So first up, we have Roland Ngassam from Cameroon. Roland, can you hear us? Hello, Roland.
Hello, Roland.
Hello.
Hello.
I think you need to.
I think you need to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Roland, I think you need to speak closer. Yeah, your voice is really.
Your voice is really.
I think we'll move on to. We'll move on to Derry Anthony from Ghana, then we'll trace circle back to Roland at the end of the call.
Hello.
Hello, yes, go ahead, we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, hello, Anthony, we can hear you, go ahead.
Yeah, give me the opportunity to give. Okay, thank you very much for giving about activities that went on in the Ghana group within the week. I As usual, members who attended last week's meeting were thanked and asked to confirm the attendance for today's meeting. A YouTube link talking about a discussion of Black history with Professor John Henry Clark was kept in the group for members to listen. Also, a short video where the people in the video were talking about xenophobia was posted in the group. It's simply telling us that no one should support xenophobia. It was also said that members should help the family by sharing their favorite healthcare providers in order to help other Black people during this pandemic. An image was kept in the group. The inscription was simply saying that all humans are created equally and only self-centered individuals are creating hatred against skin color. Another YouTube link talking about firing line with William F. Buckley Jr. How does it go with the Black movement kept in the group for members to watch? Sorry. It was against. They found out that most of the members are finding it difficult to recommend businesses. The family has decided that to make it easier, we should submit the businesses recommendations in the group. A format was given for members to follow for their recommendations. Names of members who have been promoted to become ambassadors were kept in the group with their country of origin. This week, new members were added to the group. Going to COVID-19 updates in Ghana. Ghana has so far recorded a total of 86,737 since the emergence of COVID-19. Out of this, the active cases are 4,782. The number of recoveries are 81,299, and the total deaths recorded so far are 656. Since there are vaccines in the country and they are vaccinating people, the number of people vaccinated so far are 300,000. This is the end of the report of activities that went on in the Ghana group within the week. Thank you very much. I am because we are. Derry Anthony reporting from Ghana.
All right, thank you so much, Anthony. Up next, we have Amara Jones from Sierra Leone.
Good day, I love Black people.
Hello, Amara Jones. Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. I am Ambassador Amara Jones for Sierra Leone. This is a weekly report covering the activities done so far from the 7th March 2021 to 13th March 2021, which is today. Summary of key activities. Last week, we had a very educative and interactive Zoom meeting. This week, we also welcomed new members to our country group. Auguste Pande, who is the moderator, appreciated all members and ambassadors that joined the last week's Saturday meeting. And he also encouraged everyone to register for this call today. The I Love Black People Country Group Action Mission BO goal activities and definitions of key terms was kept in the group. The names and views of our liberation use was kept on the group for new members.
Hello, Amara Jones. Hello. Okay, it seems we have lost Amara Jones. Mr. Maponder? We had a few questions for you from the group.
Okay. What's the question?
You have Alfred who's asking, I guess he's asking how you can, like, I guess he's asking how we can make investors bring development in Africa. He's specifically speaking about Zambia.
Well, you know, investors follow where they can make money. But for them to come to your country, you yourselves have got to show that you believe in your system and you attract domestic investment. I think quite often we think, you know, that no, investment has to only come from outside. And yet we have a lot we can contribute to investment that outside people can bring in. For example, let's take a place like Zambia. Zambia has got quite a substantial amount of minerals, it's got a lot of agricultural land. So it depends on what type of investors are trying to attract. Let's take an example which may be easiest. An investor coming to invest in agriculture in Zambia. If you have access to land, then your land becomes your contribution to the investment. You're going to put a value to your land. Quite often in many African countries, because we don't have title deeds to land that we own, hence an investor would feel uncomfortable, you know, to put money into a piece of land which he doesn't know there's any evidence that you own it, there's any way in which it is identified with you. So that is, you know, probably one of the easiest areas that you can get an investor to come in, so that you are providing land as your equity. And then the next stage is that you, depending on the size of the land and what crops you are going to grow, that can lead to further processing, you know, of the product that you put there. So the most important thing is to be able to deal with the issue of ownership of land. How does government treat ownership of land? If you are into agriculture, you want to attract investors in that agriculture, then the only thing that you can be able to provide, amongst many others, is that you have the land which has value, because without that land, you can't do anything. You know, so that is, if you are into the minerals, again, if the government of Zambia allows people to have permits, you know, to own patches of, you know, areas, you know, where there are minerals and so forth, you know, then again, that permit you have or certificate you have of ownership of a place that has mineral resources becomes your contribution, and the investor can come in and, you know, bring in the investment. Quite often, some of the investors will say, well, how do I know what percentage, you know, of ownership you will have? Because this is just a piece of ground. We don't know what is underground and so forth, you know, but as an investor, that is part of the risk that you have to take. If I have rudimentary information, you know, that, okay, there are some copper deposits in this area, then as an investor, you have to bring in with the resources to establish what will be the quantity, you know, the resource, you know, the copper that you have in that area. Then you monetize that, and, you know, that will establish, you know, what your contribution will be. Those are just some few examples, you know, for Zambia, for what I'm familiar with, you know, that you've got a lot of mineral resources there. You also have a lot of agricultural land, which you can use as equity to attract investors. When the investors see, you know, that you as a local person, you've got some interest in the project, then they don't feel they're just coming in to pour money, and if you don't like them anymore, you just chuck them out, you know. So whatever you do, at least you've got your skin in the game, like they say. Any other question? I think that should.
Yes, we do have one more question.
Yeah.
So we have Mark Murphy asking, can Mr. Ampondera explain what the theory of epigenetics would mean to him, and how is it related to the underdevelopment of Africa in general?
Can you go over that again?
Yeah, so he's asking, can you explain what the theory of epigenetics means to you?
Equity genetics?
Epigenetics.
Epigenetics.
Yes. What it means to you and how it's related to the underdevelopment of Africa in general.
Well, I must admit, my daughter was trying to explain to me what the epigenetics is a few days ago. You know, I still haven't comprehended it, but when she was saying something about that, maybe can he explain what he knows about the epigenetics?
Yeah, so McPhee, maybe if you see like have a follow-up to Mr. Ampondera, you can just type it out on the chat section. Maybe. Yeah, so he says, I'll read it out for you. He says, epigenetics is roughly defined as the practice in which African leaders naturally gravitate to self-preservation after being in power because of the effect of colonization.
I'm still missing something. Can you go over that again? I'm sorry.
So he's saying epigenetics is roughly defined as the practice in which African leaders naturally gravitate to self-preservation after being in power because of the effect of colonization.
Or to self-preservation of the African leaders?
Yes.
Well, I guess from a political point of view, that has been, you know, like a trend. But I'm seeing that trend slowly peeling away. And the only way that it can be hastened are two. One is technology. The way in which, you know, African leaders used to control populations was because they had overwhelming state power, you know, police force, the army, you know, if you said something you didn't agree with, they would exert that, you know, that force, and then that made people kind of withdraw. But right now, because of technology, they can no longer control, let's say, the spread of news, you know, spread of messages, you know, through internet, through WhatsApp, whatever, and so forth. So they are losing, you know, grip on that type of control. And then secondly, if you notice, many of them defined their constituencies more on the ethnic or tribal groups. And for those who came in by, you know, through military coups and so forth, that was a different thing altogether. But as far as the majority of politicians, their base was from a tribal point of view. But right now, the trend is that many of the people growing up now, they are not tied up with the tribal or ethnic customs. They are much more, you know, exposed to a wider world. So the leaders can no longer depend on support from young people simply because it's based on ethnic or tribal basis. You know, so that type of control is kind of slipping away. And as far as, you know, military rule is concerned, as you may know, that the African Union will not recognize a government that comes into power through military rule. So I see that, you know, trend kind of going away. But next time, I'll go more deeper into the epigenetics. I'll do more research on it, and then maybe come and say more intelligently answer and relate it to your question.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pondera. Yeah, I also see there's a question from Alfred. I think I can take this one. He was asking about whether we have members in Zambia. And the question of that is yes, we do have members throughout the globe. So we actually have a membership program that you can visit our website to check. So anyone who's able to register on our website is considered a member of the I Love Black People movement. And we also have paid memberships for the people who support us through contributing funds towards the movement. Again, that information is also available on our website. And again, we also have our ambassadors program. So these are people who join the movement as I Love Black People ambassadors, and mostly help in recommending businesses and promoting our movement as a brand. So again, that information is available on our website if you're interested to check. And as of now, we have roughly over 90,000 members globally. And yeah, so we do have members in Zambia as well.
Yeah, well, if I can just add one thing on Zambia, you know, tourism is a major attraction, you know, particularly around the Victoria Falls area, and also you've got some game parks in Zambia. So again, it's really a question of how the laws are set up in Zambia. If you have got an area where you get a permit to set up a tourist facility in Vic Falls and so forth, you know, I mean, again, having access to that land, it's a huge thing as far as the tourism, you know, sector is concerned. And that's really what you should aspire to have. And then you can attract, you know, investors to come and set up the infrastructure and also attract, you know, tourists to come to your facility. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pondera. So we have Nana Kua joining us today for the Pan-African Healthcare class.
Okay, no, that's fine. You know, Nana, we welcome you, and the floor is all yours. Is Nana available? Is she there?
I think she's still setting up her microphone.
Oh, okay, okay. Maybe I may plug in the other trend that I'm seeing happening is in the cultural area. You know, with this when Wakanda, you know, the Black Panther movie was done, you know, I mean, it created a lot of interest, you know, and relevance, you know, to African people all over the world. So I see there's quite a lot of integration of African musicians and, you know, Black musicians in the USA, a lot of collaboration taking place in Europe and so forth. You know, so I see that trend taking place, you know, for cultural integration, you know, for Black people from the continent, from the USA, from the Americas, from Europe and so forth. You know, and I think that is something that I see happening. I belong to an organization. We're setting up a Wakanda city in Ghana. Should be coming up shortly. And again, that trend of integrating African economies, it's quite a big one. Integrating African infrastructure, the Cape to Cairo roadway, railway communications, telecommunications, you know, throughout Africa, removing open skies, and, you know, removing barriers, you know, in terms of moving from one part of Africa to the other without having to need a visa and all that, you know. So that's going to be a major trend taking place in Africa, and of course the creation of the African Free Trade Agreement, again, is going to be a huge thing, taking place in 2021 for the African people.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mapondera. I see Aqua is available. Can you hear us?
Good
Okay,
morning.
welcome, Afua. It's nice to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you as well. How are you?
No, I'm good. I've got a book on African medicines written in Zimbabwe. Unfortunately, part of it is in Shona, but I'll send it to you, but you'll see where they have the various African medicines, and then they'll be explaining what they do and so forth. So.
Oh, great. I'd love to have that. Thank you.
I'll certainly do that. Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is well. Thank you for joining us again. Nana Akua here. I wanted to say that I have emailed, for those who sent me their email, I emailed the manual, but of course through the WhatsApp, I also sent some documents. So I hope that everyone got them. There were two people's emails that I probably just wrote down to where I could
Hello, Aqua. We seem to have lost you there. Let me see if I can get her back on. So I'll be following up with, let me follow up with Aqua and get her back on the call in just a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one more minute. I'm still following up to see if we can get Akua back on the call.
I see there are a few questions and comments. Do you want me to maybe address them whilst Afua is getting ready? Or?
Yes, that would be great.
Let's see. As a descendant of those sold into slavery, I desire to return to Africa and discover my roots and family. However, I would like the comforts that I enjoy in America to begin to develop those comforts so that me and my family and friends are comfortable when we return. Which specific development should we start with? Oil, medicine, infrastructure, and which specific country should we start? Okay, this is from Casey. Okay, the trends of African Americans in particular, going back to Africa, has been building up. What I would advise, I mean, there's so much to learn from Africa, and I can't advise and say, okay, go to country A, country B, country C. I think just you have to do a lot of homework and choose, a country to go to just for a visit. I wouldn't advise, that you just take your stuff and say, okay, I'm going to Tanzania, or I'm going to Dar es Salaam, or I'm going to Kinshasa, or I'm going to Johannesburg. If you're interested in any one of those countries, I would suggest you take a visit there and, see what they are all about. The first impressions you would have at times may not provide you all the information that you need, but also at the same time, you can sort of feel the vibes, that, hey, maybe this is where I want to come to. So after your first visit, you can come back to the US, sit down, make an analysis of all the various places you went to. And then maybe at the flip of a coin, say, okay, I'm going to go to country X. When you look at, the political situation going on there, what is the economy like? What are some of the obvious features, you may like? For instance, a coastal city like Luanda in Angola, you've got some very beautiful beaches there. But if you can't speak Portuguese, that could be a problem, even though the Angolans are also using English as a second language. You can go to, a place like, Accra, it's a beautiful place, beautiful beaches and so forth. Then you got interior places, like, Harare, in Zimbabwe, or Lusaka, Zambia. They have their own, pros and cons, As to which area you go to, I would say probably the first one, depending on how much money you have. I can't say go get into oil, because that's a momentous investment that one may go into. But if you have got access, to that type of investment, I'm sure all these countries, that have just discovered, oil resources and so forth, would be glad to, for you to take a part. If it is in medicine, of course, that's a huge one, depending on what part of medicine you're involved in. Is this the production of medicines, the supply of medicines, supply of medical equipment? So whatever part of it, there's a lot you can do there. Infrastructure, again, that's a very broad term. What sort of infrastructure? Are you building airports? Are you building highways, bridges? what, so it depends what area you're
And
in. So I can't specify for you. Okay, is Akua ready?
yes, we have her back on the call.
I am back. I
Okay.
am having technical difficulties this morning. I don't know why my computer just completely shut down, but I'm back. So forgive the delay. So I would like, did everyone that's on the call receive the WhatsApp with the information on colloidal silver? I hope that you did. And that is sort of a continuation of what we spoke about last week, where I added some information about how to boost the immune system. And I didn't make mention of it last week, and I came across the handouts about colloidal silver. So I wanted to add that on to this week so that I did not overlook sharing that information with you. I think it's very important. Colloidal silver is basically ionized silver. It was sort of the first immune boosting substance, or first antibiotic, I should say. And while it is an antibiotic and does in fact kill bacteria, it also kills viruses and other disease-causing microorganisms. So if you can refer, and I'm not going to even attempt to share the screen because I don't have this document on my desktop, so I know I'll fumble through it. But I wanted to just give an overview about colloidal silver. It's a natural antibiotic. It has various uses. It combats fungus in the body. It kills diseases such, caused by viruses, caused by bacteria, caused by parasites. And it basically improves the immune system's ability to fight against any kind of disease. It also soothes burns, repairs skin, helps with tissue damage. When I'm traveling, I often take it and add it to my water. So it's a good water purifier. So if you don't have quality water, or the water is questionable, definitely colloidal silver is something you can add a few drops into your water as a purifier. But I especially do it when I'm traveling. And I still only drink bottled water. However, not always knowing the source or the quality of the source of where it's bottled, I still always add it to my bottled water when I'm traveling. But it is effective against ringworms, cuts, scrapes, ear infections, ear mites, itchy areas, fungus infections or fungal infections, acne, bug bites, abscesses, burns, parasitic infections, viral warts, inflammation, allergy symptoms or allergy reactions. And that's a big one because especially here in the States, soon we'll be approaching time where a lot of people have hay fever and allergies and the symptoms of that as the weather changes and pollen is all in the air, and I'm certainly sure in other parts of the world as well. But because we have sort of this drastic change in weather, we may experience it more so than in certain areas. But it's really good for fighting off hay fever and allergies and things like that. So colloidal silver is just something I wanted to kind of add on to when we discuss certain herbs and things like that, or other things to do to boost your immune system. So please take note of that. I won't go through all of the little handouts, but I had saved those over the years. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned the colloidal silver. And again, if you gave me your email last week and wanted me to send you the packet and you didn't receive it, there were 2 people that the mail was returned because I put the wrong email address. So if you did give me that information last week, please resubmit that in the comments and I'll make sure to send that out to you. If you did get the packet and you're able, the thing that I find easiest to do is to just get it bound. If you're in a place where there's a copy center, here in the US, of course, like a Staples or Office Depot, but other places that do copies and scans and fax, or internet cafe where they do those things where you can get it bound. It's really inexpensive. It's an easy way to kind of have this many documents in one place, as opposed to like a large paperclip or what have you. And so it's just a good reference. These are not things that I created. These are more so handouts that I've compiled over the years. And so what we are going to talk about today from that, and I think I can manage to share the screen maybe, is we're going to talk about herbs. And as an herbalist, this is my thing. And I want to highlight some herbs. Oh, and if the host will let me share the screen, please.
Sorry, I also just wanted to add, like, for everyone who's interested in your class, they can send out an email to info@iloveblackpeople.com with their WhatsApp numbers, so I can add them to the WhatsApp group. That way it's easier for you to send all the information in one place.
Probably. I'm just not sure. Is there a limit to how many pages that a document can be attached in WhatsApp?
No, the limit is with the size of the document. So I think it's around 60 something megabytes. But like, if you're having any issues with your PDFs, you can just maybe email them to me, and I can like reduce the size of the documents for you.
Okay.
So you should be able to share your screen right now.
Oh. Yeah, give me a moment. Try to not be bothered by fumbling through this. I at least had it all out last week, but yeah, I did not do that today. Yes, so we're going to not do that. All right, y'all just have to listen. So herbs. Herbs are all over the planet. You will find different herbs that will pretty much do any number of things. Fortunately, you know, and thank God, there are plants, trees, shrubs, flowers that have parts that heal the body. Many herbs will do a number of different things. Sometimes it can be overwhelming trying to figure out which herb to choose, because there may be 10 things listed that those herbs will do. Instead of going through maybe specifically where they come from, because the handout that I emailed, and what I'd like to just do is just highlight some of my favorites, and if I just sort of remember right off what part of the world they are in or originate from, then I'll do that. But I think that we should definitely create our own herbal medicine chest. Our natural medicine chest should include a number of things vitamins, minerals, what we would call food supplements, essential oils, things of that. But at the core of that should definitely be herbs. And so I wanted to start there and make sure that you're familiar with some that can kind of help in most of our kind of daily concerns. The first one I'll talk about is alfalfa. Alfalfa is an herb. It's highly nutritive. It is what makes, it's full of chlorophyll, which is what makes our plants green. So we know that it's full of minerals, high in pretty much every vitamin and mineral that exists. And for no other reason, alfalfa is good to take just as, or just for all the nutrients. So some people use it as a multivitamin or a multi-mineral supplement. So it's a good herb to just include in your daily regimen. But specifically, it's used for, or been traditionally used for arthritis, for bleeding disorders, and for menopause. Another one that I know is found in a lot of parts of the world is aloe. Aloe plants grow here. I know they grow in Africa. And most times we are only familiar with aloe as it relates to skin, or topically, I should say. Burns, we know we go get the gel of aloe and we apply it to heal or soothe the burns. It has that same impact internally. So it's soothing to the entire gastrointestinal tract. So it's good to soothe the stomach. It's a mild laxative. It has a nice coating to where it's an internal kind of healer or cleanser. So look at it as not just for the skin, but also for the gastrointestinal tract. So it's healing and soothing internally and externally. Another herb I'd like to highlight, and I think is worth noting, is one called black walnut. Black walnut or black walnut hull is used for poison ivy. It's used for skin eruptions and rashes, but most prominently used for intestinal worms and parasites. So if you're in a particular area where you know there's livestock, or say you walk barefoot and you know there's certain animals or feces or things like that that you may come in contact with through your skin, especially through your feet. If you eat sushi, or if you eat certain meats or certain animals, or if you just know you don't eat well and you eat mainly cooked foods and you think a parasite cleanse would be a good idea, black walnut or black walnut hull is a good idea. That's something to really add, to your regimen. Usually in capsule form is probably how you would want to take it. It's not a very pleasant tea, and you would have to drink more cups of tea than necessary. So probably in capsule form is how you would take something like black walnut hull. Usually you would combine it with something called wormwood, which is also another parasite cleansing herb. So black walnut hull, very good for treating parasites and worms. Another herb I'd like to highlight is burdock. Burdock root. The root is what is used and most effective. However, the leaves can also be used for cleansing, but what we want for our cleansing purposes is the root. It's a powerful blood purifier and liver cleanser. And anything that we cleanse or treat the liver with, we know at the same time we're also treating the blood, right? So a liver cleanser and a blood cleanser is pretty much the same thing. So burdock root is excellent for the liver and for cleansing the blood. It has traditionally been used for arthritis, rheumatism, sciatica, and for skin problems, and it's very high in iron. So if you're anemic and or you just are prone to having low blood, you have chills or cold hands and feet, or you get fatigued easily, or you crave ice or things like that, Some of those are indications, well, they're all indications of anemia or low iron. They're not the only reasons that you might have those symptoms, but in some cases it's because you're low in iron, and burdock is an excellent herb for that. Another herb I'd like to highlight is catnip. Now, catnip, most people don't think of catnip as an herb to really heal the body. However, catnip is a very high nutrient dense herb. Most people who have cats as pets know of catnip just in terms of how that euphoric feel that it gives cats. However, for adults, or for humans, I should say, adult humans or even child humans, it's really good for diarrhea, for flatulence, for colic. So any kind of gas or intestinal issues, catnip is good for. It also has a mild sedative effect. So it is a nervine herb. So it can be calming and soothing for emotional tension or for anxiety or stress. Catnip is really good for. So even though it does the sort of opposite for cats, in humans, it is a sedative. So really good to have one of those, similar to alfalfa, has a lot of vitamins and minerals in it. So I think catnip is one of those very underrated herbs. So I wanted to highlight that, even though it's not really widely used. Another one that I will highlight at this point is dandelion. Similar to burdock, dandelion, it is a blood builder, it's a liver cleanser. So it's really good for cleansing the blood in the liver. It's also high in iron, but also high in calcium. We talked about iron in burdock. Dandelion will give you calcium and iron, okay? So if you are aging and your bones are getting older and stiffer, you need more calcium in the system, dandelion is a good option for you. It also is a mild laxative, and it's a diuretic, so it'll get rid of excess water in the body. And it's also good for high blood pressure and hepatitis. And dandelion is one of those roots that if you roast it, along with like chicory, and I think roasted chia seeds and some other things people use as coffee substitutes. But I know chicory and dandelion, if you roast those roots or seeds, those are good alternatives to coffee. So that's just sort of a side note there. The next herb I'd like to highlight is devil's claw. Another one that I think is a little underrated, but devil's claw is really good for inflammation. So if there's arthritis in the body or any form of arthritis, whether it's gout or rheumatism or what have you, but any inflammation in the joints, devil's claw is good for that type of pain. And pain is just one of those types of conditions. No matter where you go, there's some kind of pain. And so I'm always wanting folk to kind of put an asterisk or a highlight by anything that deals with pain. And so this is one of those that I want you to really take note of, because you know, pain relievers is a big business. It's a big industry. And of course, it's a big problem for a lot of people. When I go to Ghana, I do these sort of makeshift, I don't want to say clinics, but when you go as a healer, you know, there's always a need to assist folk who need help. The number one complaint would be pain. You know, my stomach's paining me. Oh, my head is paining me. My back is paining me. Pain is a big issue, and definitely in America as well. I mean, I'm sure we probably sell and make more painkillers or pain relievers than you could probably imagine. And so I want people to really start taking note that there are herbs that address pain. If you are used to really heavy pharmaceutical, drugs for pain, some of these herbs really may not do it for you. However, if you can catch a episode where it's sort of early on, or you know that you're going to have pain, whether it's say menstrual pain or say you have gout and you know you've eaten some shrimp or some lobster, and you know that those shellfish are going to increase the uric acid in your body and you're going to get inflammation. At the onset or as early as possible, what I would do is take some of these herbs that we know will decrease inflammation or help reduce pain and things like that. Because we really don't want to have to always go to some of these pain relievers, because what that does is it really impacts the liver, because the liver has to flush out and filter out all of these drugs, even if it's the over-the-counter pain relievers and things like that. It really puts added stress on the liver. So as much as possible, if we're able to address some of our pains and discomforts with herbs, this is really the route to go. And I'll add some other pain relievers, so I'll highlight those as well. But moving on to through the list, Echinacea, another very common herb. People have usually heard of Echinacea. This is one of those immune boosting herbs. It's a good cleanser of the blood and lymphatic system. Good for colds, flu, sore throats, allergies. Another thing that's good during, say, hay fever and allergy season is Echinacea. It helps the body heal because it increases the white blood cells. And so especially if you've been bitten by an insect, or you've scraped your skin or something like that, a lot of topical creams or ointments, if they have Echinacea in it, that will increase the healing time. They also have sometimes sprays. If you can get an herbal spray that you would apply like you would a Neosporin or one of those kind of antibacterial sprays, something with Echinacea will also increase your healing time. So in addition to just colds and flu, which most people know about, it's also good, for, skin conditions and healing cuts and scrapes and things of that nature. Another herb that I'd like to mention is fennel. Fennel is used a lot in Ayurvedic medicine, or it's a popular herb out of India. And we also use it here a lot. Most people know of it in terms of because of its flavor or because of in cooking, but fennel is excellent for normalizing your appetite, or more so, not so much an appetite suppressant, but helping you sort of regulate. If you know you're an overeater or something like that, fennel is really good because it kind of helps with digestion. It's used for colic, flatulence, morning sickness, and it has a mild laxative effect. Or with laxatives, it helps prevent the cramping, but it sort of serves as sort of a kind of a carrier herb. So it'll help other herbs kind of work better and be, more soothing to the system. So that's fennel. Ginger, we certainly know that ginger is found throughout the world. It's a popular Chinese herb. It's a popular African herb. It's definitely been used in Native American, herbology. So ginger is widely known. Definitely something to keep on hand, not only in its natural root form, but also in the essential oil. I recommend keeping ginger on hand, or powdered form. Even if you usually use it as cooking and you have it in the powdered form, you can also take that when needed for internal healing. But ginger is a great stimulant herb. It helps with digestion and appetite. It's great for flatulence, colds, flu. It's good for nausea. It's good for sea air and morning sickness. A lot of people will add it to teas for colds, flu, things like that, as previously mentioned. But what is not so widely or most popularly used with ginger is in a ginger bath when you have a fever, or when you say have a flu or flu symptoms and you have body aches. Ginger is also really good for fever and for relieving body aches and chills. So again, if you're having what we would typically call flu-like symptoms, adding ginger can really improve your condition and really help you feel better. Whether you do a full body bath or whether you do a foot bath, ginger is excellent for reducing fever in the body and for kind of alleviating aches and pains. Goldenseal is another herb that's pretty popular. And I'm trying to readjust myself. I'm sitting in my comfy chair today because I'm having some back spasms and I have my little ice pack behind me. So I'm not usually this laxed and I'm trying to keep from rocking in my chair to not be distracting, but forgive me and indulge me a little bit today. I'm just trying to be comfortable so that I can still, you know, present this information to you. But I'm in a little bit of pain. So bear with me. Goldenseal is another herb. It's a natural antibiotic. It's a natural antiseptic. It's used for colds, flu, pretty much any kind of infection. Goldenseal has been widely used, pretty popular, pretty expensive because it typically is wildcrafted and not as easily available as some herbs that you'll find, or Western herbs that you'll find. But it stimulates digestion and appetite. It's good for skin health, the mucous membrane is good topically for, so similar to the Echinacea, it's good topically for healing cuts, sores, bruises, and things like that. So definitely Goldenseal is one of those things you would have, not one of those that typically are used on a daily basis for more than 10 to 14 days. But if you are kind of boosting your immune system and wanting to kind of add to your overall wellness, Goldenseal would be one of those that you would take, but maybe just for 2 weeks at a time. Another herb that I would like to highlight, and I told y'all this was a pen and paper class, so I know you're probably listening like, you just saying too much, and it's a lot of information. If you got the packet, great. And if not, certainly I'll send it. My problem with, I'll either have to send the whole 3 documents, which is this whole packet, because they're saved sort of in 3 packets. So that was my hesitation with just posting it in the WhatsApp group. I'm still fine with that, but just know each week it would not be separate documents. Or I guess I could go back and rescan and then just send those, but really just trying to do what is the most simple. But you will get this information one way or the other if you didn't get it through email. And I don't want to fumble with sharing the screen and finding it. Matter of fact, I now realize it's on my flash drive, which is over there in my purse, and I'm not getting up to get it. But, and I hate kind of fumbling through this. All of this is new to me. I'm used to being in front of people talking, and it's been a year, but yes, I'm still not used to it. So bear with me. You know, I'm a real kind of simple, down to earth person, country girl again, as I mentioned last week. So all of this, and you know, I'm not 60 or 70, I'm almost 50, but I still feel like the old lady that isn't familiar with technology with some of this stuff. So again, bear with me, doing the best I can do. So don't worry if you don't have your pen and paper, you will get this information. Ideally, this is something you would have beforehand. But if you take notes and then kind of fill it in or kind of see it in black and white later, know that you'll have this information. So if you're out and about and you're not able to write everything down, no worries. But just to sort of go over these and let you know which ones I really highlight and think are maybe most important if you are kind of creating your own natural medicine chest. So the next one is mullein. And I actually mentioned mullein last week because mullein is in the formula that I was saying that I made to just kind of boost my system during this whole coronavirus piece. And the reason is mullein is an expectorant. It's used for congestion, sinus and bronchial problems, for asthma, for earaches, for cough, and of course, cold and flu, symptoms in general. So mullein is one of those good respiratory herbs that one would have available if you are having any of those issues or you want to combat any of those issues. So definitely one to highlight. The next one is nettle, which is one of my favorite herbs. Nettle is another highly nutritive, herb, but probably mainly, or what is best used for is increasing your iron. It's really high in iron, and it boosts your energy. Lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. But it's good for any food or environmental allergies. It's good for the hair and skin and scalp. So for baldness, for dandruff, nettle is excellent for. And I mentioned iron, but it's also good for the mineral silica and potassium. So again, a highly nutritive herb. So one of those that I definitely think is of great value to add to your natural medicine chest. Another herb that I think is good for boosting the immune system is Paudarco. P-A-U-D'-A-R-C-O. But Paudarco is one of those Native American herbs that was used here in this country by Native Americans. But it's popular for candida or yeast infections. It's good for other fungal, bacterial, and viral infections, and overall immune booster and blood purifier. So definitely one to add to our immune boosting herbs. I'm gonna skip down. Let's talk about skullcap. Skullcap, another nutritive herb, but it's also good specifically for the nervous system. So it aids in nerve health, spasms, twitches, and insomnia. So this is one of those herbs that I would put that asterisk by in terms of relieving pain, but more so because it's a nervine and it just sort of helps calm the nervous system, which can aid in dealing with pain. Skullcap alone wouldn't heal, say, or treat a backache or a headache, but along with other herbs, it will help kind of soothe the nervous system. And of course, if you're having, say, back spasms like I am, or leg cramps or something like that, this is a good herb to add to your herbal formula. If you're just simply trying to calm down from the day, help go to sleep a little bit, rest a little bit, skullcap by itself can be highly effective. But if you're really dealing with some major issues or some pain things, you'd want to add it with some other nervine herbs and some other herbs for pain. St. John's wort, I'll mention, somewhat popular herb, but probably underrated, probably only used for people who have experienced depression. But because these times are very depressing, and a lot of times we don't focus so much on our mental health, I want to highlight St. John's wort because life can be difficult. And if we need help, we should get help and not feel any kind of way about it. And this, I think, is a good way to start, even if you don't want to talk to someone or do counseling or something of that nature. Some of these herbs that are nervine herbs or sedative types of herbs might be a good answer to dealing with something like depression or some sort of emotional, upset. So St. John's wort, I usually, would take in, say, capsule form. Some people may use it in tea, but maybe capsule or extract form is going to be the best option. But another little hidden jewel about St. John's wort is that it's also a very powerful antiviral. So usually if people have heard about St. John's wort, they've only used it for, say, depression. But St. John's wort is also good for viral infections, is most noted for its benefits with herpes and Epstein-Barr. So in addition to its effect on depression and emotional upset, also helps with pain and viral infections. So St. John's wort definitely worth mentioning. And then I think the last one I'll mention is probably my absolute favorite herb, valerian. Valerian is, it's a sedative herb, it's a nervine herb. So it helps calm the system, helps relax the system. This is one of those you would put an asterisk by for pain. And I like it and use it so much because it's mild enough for younger people, for children, it's mild enough for seniors, and it's mild enough for even pregnant women. So sort of very sensitive classes or groups of people, valerian can still be used with. So I think it's a highly effective herb, very important, very safe. So it's a strong tranquilizer, impacts the nervous system, good for pain, headache, excessive nervousness, and insomnia. The only thing with valerian is it stinks. It smells really bad. Okay. I can't see everybody's face, but Miss Deborah, I just loved how you looked up. But yes, it smells. That's what I said. So this is not something you would do as a tea or a tincture or herbal extract. You really would only do valerian in capsule form. And you'll still kind of smell it through the capsules, but you know, you'll just go on and swallow it down and you'll get the benefits. But it's an excellent herb, but the smell can be off-putting. So for some people, they're gonna be like, I am not ingesting this, it stinks. But it's an excellent herb. So really overlook the smell. I promise it's highly effective, okay? So that's the kind of highlighted list. No, let me actually add one, and it's not on this list. So even if you have this list already, this is not listed, so I do want you to write this down. White willow bark is another herb that's great for pain. Actually, I like two that I'd like to mention. And then the other one is meadowsweet. So it's one word, but the two words together, meadow and sweet. Meadowsweet is considered like nature's aspirin. So it's often used for headache and things like that, that one would typically use aspirin for. But meadowsweet and white willow bark are two other herbs that are really effective for dealing with pain, okay? So I want you to make sure you add those. What you'll also get if you don't already have the email, but what you'll also get is similar to what I kind of went over. I highlighted, I've written out, I added an article I had written some years ago that highlighted a lot of these herbs that I just mentioned and why they're so important. And these are the ones that I would highly recommend back when I was making recommendations, but I don't do that anymore. And you'll have that as well when you do get the packet via WhatsApp or via email. But this just sort of reiterates some of the stuff I've said today. And it lists some other things in addition to that. But what I want to do is just sort of talk sort of about safety and precautions and that sort of thing with herbs. Let me give my disclaimer, because as a traditionally formally trained person in naturopathic medicine, because of changes in the law here in Maryland where I live, I cannot call myself a doctor. So Alex will have to adjust that when sending out the information on these platforms. And I can't call myself a naturopath. and to remind me that they find me. So if you've heard this story already, you'll probably hear it again, because even if I forget and I say something, I try to go back and correct myself, because, so these people ain't like, listen, we told you can't say that, do that, operate like that, right? But when I did consult folk, one thing that you always have to be mindful of is just what other people are taking, whether they're on prescriptions, what their diagnoses are, what their conditions are. And while herbs are highly effective and extremely safe, my disclaimer is that you still should consult your healthcare professional before taking any herbs, right? And I think the biggest concern, just from my experience, is more so if people are on pharmaceutical medications, just to make sure that there's no interaction or contraindication or negative reaction with those prescriptions and some natural occurring substance like these herbs that we're talking about. But that having been said, most of the contraindications or precautions, again, are in that regard. I gave mention to the ones such as Goldenseal, where you wouldn't take for, more than 2 weeks. Most of the others that I've mentioned don't have sort of those limitations. But again, if you are, excuse me, if you are taking some kind of medications, you just want to do a check. Now, I say that sort of tongue in cheek because if you go to your doctor and you say, is it okay to take this, because they don't deal in herbs and a lot of them don't believe in it, they're going to end up telling you no anyway. Well, however, you have some that are now kind of dibbling and dabbling in it to where, they become a little more familiar and maybe a little more open to it. And so you may find some that are now getting into it, because in fact, what, from my knowledge and experience, is that they're trying to do is trying to squeeze out other folk like myself who strictly do herbs and natural remedies and that sort of thing, so that they can do it. And so that they can be the only authorities on anything that you can even go to the drugstore and buy. So I say those things just, to protect myself, and just also to protect yourself if you are taking any kind of medicines that could possibly have some interaction with some of these, natural herbs and food supplements and that sort of thing. But in the handout, what I also want to highlight is something called Essiac. Essiac tea, or the herbs in this Essiac formula, I often discuss with people just as an overall body cleanser or body boosting supplement. But it has also traditionally been used in Canada. It almost passed as a cure for cancer. So for some people, they certainly use it for that. But if nothing else, it helps to cleanse and detox our internal organs, whether we're talking about the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas, the intestines. These 4 herbs that's in this Essiac formula are very important. And I think, so whether someone has a particular condition or not, is something that I have used myself to cleanse and to detox the body from just environmental toxins, from toxins in foods, from poor eating habits, that sort of thing. And the 4 components of this Essiac are slippery elm, turkey rhubarb, sheep sorrel, and burdock root. I know these are really strange names, but we've talked about burdock already, right? But these three others, you know, you may be hearing for the first time, or at least the first time today. But turkey rhubarb, slippery elm, sheep sorrel, and burdock are very powerful when used together. And so these are herbs that I think it's a good idea to consider adding to your chest, your medicine chest as well. And the reason though, and other than writing those down, it's probably nothing else you need to do at this time, because you will need to see the instructions, because it's not just as simple as combining them and putting them in the cup and adding hot water. So it's not your typical tea. It is drank in tea form, but you kind of brew it and you let it sit. So you sort of do what we call it, and this is something we learn in my herbalism class that I teach, the difference between an infusion and a decoction. An infusion is just simply, say, making a tea where you're simply infusing the herbs with the water, right? It may take 10, 20 minutes. A decoction is when you're it's sort of like cooking down the solution or the formula. So it's more like a slow simmer that's done over the course of some hours. So you usually will take at least 2 hours, and you're kind of slow cooking this formula, and then letting it sit or steep or further infuse for at least 12 hours. Okay, so it's like making a super strong tea. So it's a little different. So there are instructions with that, but so you will get that. It's just that I won't go over that today. But Essiac is what these 4 herbs together is called. And that's really just the nurse out of Canada that came up with the formula. But you know how some people think that they are always inventing stuff, discovering stuff, finding stuff that already existed, right? So we kind of loosely call it Essiac formula, because Renee Casey was the nurse that sort of, I guess, first got noted for using these 4 herbs together. But we often know how, again, people come across stuff that already existed and they call it their own, as if they created it, as if they were a god or something. So let me just take a break for just a second and scroll through these comments. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put those here. And what I would like to talk about next Oh yeah, and you know what? I'm glad someone mentioned that, because remember, I had that bright idea last week, that I would actually give you my email, because I'm just scrolling through and I'm actually, yes, I will. I actually don't have it in me today to try to write down 25 emails like I did last week. So, and yes, we want to follow the protocol also. Please, as the host stated already, so that you can be added to the WhatsApp, please do that as well. However, I don't mind, so that you have it all in one part. If you like, I will email it to you as well. But what I'm going to do is put my email here, and what I say is to email me, and I can just reply with the document. So what a lot of people have used for high blood pressure is garlic. Cook with it, eat as much as you can of it. However, I detest garlic. So, you know, so probably for as much as you need to take, you need to be able to tolerate it. So for me, even when I used to take the odorless garlic pills, I still end up belching up the garlic, and I just tasted and smelled garlic all day long. So not my favorite. However, garlic is effective for both high cholesterol and high blood pressure, based on other people's reports and from experience. But for high blood pressure, what I have known and used is juniper berry. I've used hawthorn berry. There are diuretic herbs that help get rid of like excess water in the body. Usually those water pills that people are prescribed for the hypertension, your diuretic herbs like uva ursi or buchu, celery seed, watermelon seed. These are diuretics that get rid of excess water in the body and can help with lowering blood pressure. Another thing that I've used for high blood pressure is the essential oil called neroli. It's Neroi, Noroli. Neroli is really good to use in diffusers and baths. You can mix with a carrier oil or like a vegetable-based oil or seed oil, and you can use it all over your body. I think doing self-reflexology with essential oils like neroli and other oils that can help heal the body of different conditions is a good idea as well. Reflexology is the therapeutic massage or stimulation of different reflex points on the hands and feet, right? And so I more so do foot reflexology. And since I won't stick my foot up here in the screen, usually so on the feet, for example, the big toe corresponds to the head. So if you're prone to headaches or even in cases where you have stress-induced headaches, or if your high blood pressure is because of stress or tension, manipulating the big toe is a good idea, a good place to start. Usually the tips of the toes also correspond with the sinuses. The base of the toes correspond to the sinuses, the ears, or anything dealing sort of with the head. Sort of in the middle of the foot is sort of the area with the kidneys and the bladder. The lower part of the foot where your heel is corresponds to your intestines or your colon. So if you Google a reflexology chart, it will show you what parts of the foot, what parts of the hand correspond to the different parts of the body. And just after you have bathed or showered, as you are moisturizing your skin, you can certainly use that as an opportunity to massage those reflex points in order to get, a result throughout the entire body. highly effective. I do it every night. So I make sure that's part of my little routine. That's my self-care routine, is to do sort of self-reflexology. I always use whatever cocoa butter, shea butter, whatever, put it in my hand, whichever oil I want to use. I like peppermint, but again, it could be neroli, it could be juniper, it could be cypress, it could be lavender, any of the essential oils. I put a few drops and I just massage my feet. And I hit all of those areas that I know. The top of the feet, I know this is my hand, but the top of my feet, your lymphatic system is there. And we know our lymphatic system is what helps us fight off disease, or helps us keep our immune system in check, right? So I make sure that I rub across the top of my feet, you know, so any way that you can manipulate any and every reflex point on your feet and on your hands, that's something that you can do daily. And that's a nice way to incorporate the essential oils in your healing. The last herb that I mentioned, I don't know the last herb that I mentioned. Y'all know I just be talking. If you don't see me looking down, I'm just talking, which means you getting accurate information. I just might not remember exactly what I said. So I mentioned, let's see, Buchu, B-U-C-H-A, no, B, and I can't spell, y'all, B-U-C-H-U. I mentioned hawthorn, I mentioned juniper. I can't remember what else I mentioned. So I have traditionally used a herb called slippery elm for ulcers. Slippery elm, I just mentioned in this Essiac formula, it's sort of really soothing. Oh, and marshmallow root. Those are really like soothing herbs that kind of help coat the lining of the stomach. So if one had ulcers, that would be a good place to start. Also, in my experience, if or when I had ulcers, I juiced white potatoes. It sounds weird, right? And again, you can, you know, I would add maybe like a little ginger to it, maybe some cucumber to it. But potato juice is also good for ulcers. And that's something I've used in the past. Yeah, you can always combine herbs together. I would say limit it to 3 or 4 or 5, maybe. You don't have to, you know, put every single herb that you ever have known to boost the immune system, for example, all at one time. But if you, and also the feasibility of that is not that great unless you know, do have a large stash of, unless you do have a large stash of different herbs, it may not even be possible to do every herb that you know anyway. But say if you have 3 or 4 different herbs that I've mentioned or that you've learned about that do boost the immune system, you can certainly just start there. You don't have to have all of the herbs or a lot of them, or you may just simply start with one. You know, if you just had just Goldenseal, one could certainly, one could certainly just do that one. And so if for 2 weeks you did Goldenseal and then you switched up and you did some of the others, then that's more than fine. Okay. In my experience also with high cholesterol, I'm just kind of scrolling back up to learn about, and we are going to talk about that in the next class, go over some nutritional things. One thing I would take particular note for anyone who has high cholesterol, for example, is when we have the discussion on saturated, unsaturated, monounsaturated, trans fats, when we talk about the different types of fats and oils, I would also take good note of that to really learn in terms of how to address that in terms of how and what we eat and that sort of thing. So know that we'll address that as well. So the next thing I want to talk about is okay. So one thing I thought about earlier, and I was gonna kind of let that go, but I think that what I will do is talk about some things to make. So because it's not just good enough to hear or to know about these certain things, is I want you to know. So I kind of briefly just mentioned a few in terms of taking it in capsule form or taking it as a tincture or taking it in tea form or what have you, is how to sort of really make some other things. So I thought something really easy to share with you since I pulled out my liniment for my back is a aches and pain liniment. I talked about last week where I make my own, well, I pretty much make any number of things. I've been making products and I can pretty much make anything. I've been making products for 25 years. I mentioned making the antibiotic or hand sanitizer. I make more like a sanitizing spray, but I was just reminded to maybe mention how to very simply, and that was pretty much just the rubbing the isopropyl alcohol with essential oils. I'm in case, I don't know if, I think most of the people that I'm seeing here were here last week as well, but it was as simple as making, putting the alcohol in a spray bottle with tea tree oil, clove, rosemary, lemon, oils like that. All of these that have antiseptic, antiviral, antibiotic properties, any oil that you like is good. But the other really simple thing that I wanted to share is how to make a liniment. This is something we usually do in my herbalism class, but I think it's really simple and on the same lines with the alcohol. So if, for example, you're stocking up on alcohol, and apparently people are, because I can't order more than 2 bottles at a time from Walmart, for example, because I guess they try not to run out. But the liniment is a topical I don't know the word I want to say, a topical treatment for aches, pains, muscle spasms, things of that nature. And it's as simple as, and if you saw last week, I pulled out just sort of a jar. It could be a mason jar, it could be an amber colored jar, any kind of jar with a lid. You basically can just use, in this case for the liniment, herbs that are good for aches and pains are things like eucalyptus, cayenne, drawing a blank. Cayenne, eucalyptus, wintergreen. Get up anyway, right? Yeah. I'll tell you exactly what's in mine if I can see it. I don't wear glasses. I don't. Lobelia. Yeah, I was forgetting about that one. Lobelia, I use. Arnica. I was forgetting about Arnica. I mentioned cayenne. You can put ginger, but herbs that we know help to alleviate pain or topically is what you can put. And you pretty much are putting those actual herbs in a jar with the alcohol. And again, just like if you were making the tincture. Oh, and I realized I didn't finish the instructions for the tincture, but pretty much you are, if this is the container, you're putting maybe a third of the container with herbs and filling the rest with the alcohol, right? And for the liniment, you're gonna let that sit for say 5 to 7 days. And each day you can just sort of go shake it, make sure it's kind of getting fully, infused into that alcohol. And then you're going to strain it off. And that's the part that I didn't say about the tincture last week. Tinctures take about 2 weeks. And if you were here last week and we talked about that, but basically what you do is then get cheesecloth or some kind of strainer. I use a strainer and cheesecloth on top of it. And what you want is the food grade or cheesecloth like that you would get like maybe from the bakery section, not from like the automotive section, because I'm sure they don't really kind of manufacture that cheesecloth to where you want to put something you're ingesting in. But cheesecloth is one of those things they use for so many different purposes that you might find it, in a car section or hardware section. But you want the kind, and ideally you want it unbleached and you want it, like I said, food grade. But you basically lay the cheesecloth in a strainer, a mesh strainer, and you pour your liquid out so that it catches the solid herbs. And then, your liquid is then in another container, and however you bottle it up. If we're talking about the tinctures that we talked about last week that you ingest, you want to try to keep it in a glass bottle, preferably amber. And amber is just like these brown colored, glasses. So this is my liniment actually that I make. I also just happen to have this one in an amber, but this is a plastic. The liniment can be in a plastic. It doesn't have to be in glass because this is used for topical use. But this you can also put in, a plastic container. But same thing, you're straining the eucalyptus and cayenne and all of that off after about 5 to 7 days. And you then just sort of use it, put it on a cotton pad or a cotton swab, and apply it wherever you need it. I've also used it in like a foot bath. So for tired, achy feet, this is an excellent thing to put, in a foot bath. So that's something really quick and easy to make. So it's much better than say just alcohol or just some of these other like icy hot types of things. The cayenne is kind of serving that purpose, but then the other herbs are also kind of giving it more of a sedative effect without heating it up. And especially since sometimes these are issues that are already hot, they're already inflamed. So you don't always want just hot. So the cayenne is giving it some heat, but you have these other cooling sedative types of herbs that'll help with the pain as well. So are there any other questions? Okay. So yeah, if you all and email me. That'd be better. So the next thing that I want to talk about is so we talked about, so I will save, I'll try to follow my syllabus. I did make it up. I might as well follow it, right? So I will wait for next week to talk about now let's throw homeopathy in here now. Next week, we'll talk about the essential oils and the flower remedies, because yeah, I'm going to do that for next week. Because I'm not going to separate out talking about the herbs from the different parts of the world. But another one I think that bears mentioning, though, is the South African potato. It's a herb, and I just personally have started using it. It's also known as a good immune boosting herb. I have it in capsule form. I imagine you can use it in other ways, but I use it in capsule form. But that is, and it's not a potato, but it is sort of a, I think it's the stem. I don't think it's the root. I could be wrong. But that herb is also good for boosting the immune system. It's been reported as healing really serious conditions like cancer and HIV and that sort of thing. But just in terms of boosting the immune system and fighting off any type of virus, bacteria, fungus, parasite, one worth noting. I've mentioned some Indian ones. I've mentioned some Native American ones. Mentioned some Chinese ones. I mentioned ginger. So that's what we'll do with the herbal piece. And right along with herbal remedies, we have homeopathic remedies. Homeopathic remedies, and I think I mentioned briefly last week, natural occurring substances, but not all are from plants. Some are mineral-based, some are even insect-based, but natural occurring substances. So they're basically natural occurring. You usually take homeopathic remedies under your tongue. It's called sublingually. They usually come in either pellet or tablet form. And they get into your bloodstream quicker because you're not ingesting them and swallowing them, and they don't have to go through the whole digestive system. So for those reasons, some people prefer homeopathics to herbs. So it really just depends on what the issue is, or what condition you are addressing. My children, even though I'm an herbalist and I've been an herbalist for all these years, my children take better to homeopathics. And when in infancy and toddler age anyway, that's just more feasible to administer to small children is homeopathics. You can put it in their mouth and it's going to dissolve and whatever. Anyway, they'll try to chew up half of it anyway, but it still gets into the system, and it goes into the mucus membranes, the lining, under the tongue. So it gets into the bloodstream quicker. But homeopathics, as I mentioned previously, is what pharmacology was based off of. It's just that they then added other man-made and chemical substances, whereas homeopathy is strictly the natural occurring substances. They're very popular. You can find them pretty much anywhere, whether online or in health food stores. Pretty much all health food stores carry them. Pretty much and again, you'll get this handout. This is in the packet if you don't already have it. But these medicines should generally be taken in either the 6th or 30th potency. So it'll say 6X or 10X, or it'll say 10C or 30C. So when you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But generally, if there's a minor pain or discomfort, you should take the medicine 3 times a day, stopping once health has been restored. If there's more severe pain, you would consider taking the medicine every 1 to 3 hours, decreasing the doses as symptoms are reduced. If you do not observe improvement in a 24-hour period in an acute condition, the medicine you're probably taking is not the correct one. If symptoms persist, consider another medicine or seek professional care. Now that one's important because basically if you've taken homeopathics for say a whole day, and so say it's been an acute situation and you've taken it every hour and you still haven't gotten any relief, go to another remedy. When you're talking about herbs, for example, you may need to take the herbs some days or weeks for it to really get into your system and bring about the change that you're trying to get, right? But homeopathy is designed to address issues more quickly. And so if you're taking something and you're not really getting any change, just switch up the remedy. And there are hundreds of I mean, I guess I don't know if it's as vast I wouldn't say it's as vast as there are herbs. So there's not as many homeopathic remedies as there are herbs because there's so many plants all over the planet. But homeopathic remedies, definitely there are hundreds of them. Usually there's either 50 or 100 that we typically use. And so if, you're trying belladonna and that's not working, you'll switch to China. But it's good because it lets you sort of get relief quicker or sooner than later. So you would just switch from, the one or from the one to another. And so the handout that you either have already or that you will have will pretty much highlight some of, I think, maybe the 10 top homeopathic remedies. Since I happen to be in my room and these happen to be here because I keep these in my room because they're little handy dandy kits. If you ever decide to get into homeopathics, generally you can buy them in kit form where I think you can see it. I'm holding it where I can see it in my block, but hopefully you can see that. But there are several companies that do sell homeopathic remedies. Washington Homeopathics is one, Boron is one, Highlands is another one, but I usually get them in kits. Like this is a 50 remedy kit. I usually travel with my 100 remedy kit so that if there is someone that's in need of some issue, I mean, I've done sessions and, assisted a whole village with my little 100 remedy kit. Because generally each kit, even the 50 remedy kits, are going to have all of these remedies that will, address any number of conditions. And that's the good thing about homeopathy. These kits, very simple to use, and they come well, my little paper is all torn up, but it comes pretty much with the list of all of the remedies and what they're used for. So you really can't go wrong. Okay. It tells you what it's for. And just like with herbs, there'll be 2 or 3 options, even within one kit. And that is what I was reading earlier. If you try one, and if allium doesn't work for your cold symptoms, then you would go to apis. So it's really simple. They're really easy to use. And the standard dosage is 3L, and they come in these itty bitty little vials, right? If you can see these. Comes in these itty bitty little vials. They're little pellets, so they're very small, right? Itty bitty little pellets. And you don't want to touch them with your hand, so you empty it into the little top, right? And then you dump it in your mouth. And you lift your tongue and dump it under your tongue, and you let it dissolve. And you take homeopathics on what's called a clean mouth. Clean mouth means you've not taken anything in other than water for at least 30 minutes. So you've not brushed your teeth within that time frame. And if you're taking homeopathics, it's really best not to use a peppermint toothpaste, which most toothpastes are mint flavored, because the mint is just so aromatic, it's overruling, and it makes the homeopathic less effective. So if you're doing homeopathics, you really want to do a non-mint, or they even have what they call homeopathic toothpaste, right? So that means it's a mint-free toothpaste. But you want to have not brushed your teeth. You want to have not eaten or drank anything other than water for at least 30 minutes. So there are some, there's some instructions to it. So it's not as convenient. However, it is convenient if you're having an acute issue, because it kind of does work faster, but you just have to regulate when you're eating and when you're, grooming yourself in terms of brushing your teeth. So, these are little, caveats that you just have to go through with homeopathics, but they're highly effective. So some of the ones that I'll highlight, I mentioned already, allium. And if you've ever heard of allium, allium is basically onion, right? So this remedy is an onion. And because it's known to cause tearing of the eyes and dripping of the nose, it is a frequent remedy for the common cold and hay fever, especially when there's a thin, watery, and burning nasal discharge that irritates the nostrils. Typically, a person's symptoms are worse in a warm room and are relieved in a cold room. So these are just directions as to who would take allium or what you would take allium for. So if you're having a cold and your nose is running, or you're having allergies or hay fever symptoms, right, and your eyes are running, allium is the remedy for it. And I didn't mention it just now, but I think last week I had sort of mentioned this concept of homeopathy is like cures like. So just like this remedy is an onion, and if you naturally just touch an onion, it causes you to tear up. Well, in the right dosage, that same substance that causes that condition also cures or heals that condition. So, little weird concept to get used to, but that is how homeopathy works. Arnica is another one. This is made from the mountain daisy. So this is a plant-based one as well. This is a #1 remedy in sports medicine and first aid. It's used for shock, trauma from injury, helps reduce pain from injury, speeds up the healing process, and so on and so forth. So a lot of times this one is used when there is some kind of physical injury or trauma, usually in sporting events, but not necessarily. You could have just slip down the steps or whatever. And then there's Arnica cream that you can just use strictly topically, but for the same purpose. Another one is chamomilla. Now this is from the chamomile plant or flower. I didn't mention that. That's a very popular herb as well. I think it's a little too mild in my taste in herb form. And most people just drink it as a tea to kind of just calm down and that sort of thing. And, if I'm using chamomile, it's going to be in homeopathic form because it's stronger and it's more direct. So it'll give you a more quicker, better, faster result. So chamomilla I've used, especially with my children. The first time I took my firstborn on the plane, Yeah, I gave her chamomilla. I put her a little behind to sleep, right? So this is for, they say many parents owe their sleep to homeopathy, not because it helps them directly, but because it's great for their infant. Chamomilla is the remedy for an irritable infant, especially from teething or colic. The infant cries incessantly and nothing seems to provide relief. Chamomilla is what you would give them. But this is not just for infants. It can be for a rowdy toddler. It could be for, you know, a school-age child that is maybe a little hyper, or what we would call ADHD or attention deficit disorder, hyperactive. You know, it could be for an adult that's just spazzing out a little bit because we stressing and we got a lot going on or whatever. So it's not just for children, but this is when it's most often used. Another homeopathic remedy is Hypericum. This is the homeopathic version of St. John's wort. So I mentioned that herb. So Hypericum is in its homeopathic form, and it's highly used in homeopathy. This remedy is a first medicine for injuries to the nerves or to parts of the body with fingers, toes, like if you smash your toe, caught in a car door or something like that. Any pain where there's shooting pain, Hypericum is the homeopathic remedy for that. Another one is Echinacea. This is a plant-based one as well. The Saint Ignatius bean. This remedy is used for psychiatrists. It's a leading homeopathy remedy for grief, anxiety, and depression. Very important. So just like I was mentioning the St. John's wort, and I talked about the importance of our mental health. This is one, again, if you're having some issues because of all this going on in the world and pre or post COVID, we have to address our mental health. And so St. John's wort in its herbal form is a good option, and this Echinacea in homeopathic form are good options. And there are many others that you can also look into and that are probably even listed that I didn't highlight. Magnesium phos. Now, I've personally used this one. It's really good for menstrual cramps or any kind of cramps, really. But yeah, it's most often used, I guess, by women, but any kind of cramps, whether it's leg cramps or what have you, back cramps, not so much back cramps, but that's more spasms, but more so leg cramps, stomach cramps. These are things that the magnesium phosphorus is good for. Nux Vomica, this is a plant-based one. This is, I've not used it for this, but this one is for okay, so maybe the overeating, but apparently also for over drinking. If you've consumed too much alcohol or other recreational drugs, this one is used to help kind of get those toxins out of the body, and more so the side effects of those things. This is a weird explanation. I pulled this off of the internet. Also, Nux Vomica is used if you're nauseous. So doesn't have to be related to drugs or alcohol. Just if there's been cases where someone is just nauseous or feeling sick, the Nux Vomica really helps with that stomach upset. And if it's one of those things where it does get relieved by vomiting, it helps with that. But if vomiting is not necessary, if there's not a toxin that needs to kind of come out of the body, then it doesn't necessarily cause you to vomit. But it just helps settle the body if there's nausea and that unsettling. So not just as it relates to people's vices. Pulsatilla, it comes from windflower. This one is used for, another one used for psychological issues, when you need to kind of quiet the mind, influence the emotions, that sort of thing. people who try to please others and that sort of thing. Pulsatilla is good for. Pulsatilla is also good for like, oh, I've used Pulsatilla. It definitely has another use. It wasn't for, because I don't have a tendency to try and please other people. Yeah, weeping. It's good for weeping, clinging, clingy children, but it's also good for earaches. When you have like unusually thirsty, problems moving, things like that. And then the last one is rust tox. And this is a good one for people who are sort of out in the elements, out in nature. You come across poison ivy. This is a medicine that treats poison ivy. So taking it internally, there's also rust tox creams and things like that, but this remedy is excellent for that, but also for sprains and strains. But yes, if you are a gardener or you like going on hikes or you're often in wooded areas, this is a homeopathic remedy that you would want to make sure is in your kit, because it will really help soothe and relieve you from your contact with poison ivy. Okay. So I don't know if there are new messages. Let's see. Purple tea. I don't know if I know of purple tea. Your white and black teas are typically your regular teas, like your Lipton teas and that sort of thing. Usually contain caffeine. Doesn't really have any benefit. We know that green tea has been reported as building your resistance to certain types of cancers and things like that. People have used green teas for weight loss, for lowering cholesterol, things of that nature. I am not right off familiar with purple tea, so I can't answer in regards to that. You can't see me. You can't see me. Can everybody see me? I'm not sharing my screen. I had tried earlier, but if y'all can see me, give me a thumbs up. Okay. So some person, okay, thank you. So, yeah, somebody was saying they can't see. Yeah, no, I gave up the notion very quickly of trying to share the screen. But the tea from Canada is called Essiac, Essiac. And that's not so much the important part. The important part is the 4 herbs that are included in that. And that's sheep sorrel, slippery elm, burdock, and turkey rhubarb. Okay. All right. So I didn't rush to make myself available today, and it happened to be that they were ready to start early. So I'm not exactly sure when the calls ended, because I don't remember, my computer was acting a little funky, but we're at 12:35. I think it's a good place to stop. I had originally always planned to go from 10:45 to 12:45. But I think this is a good stopping point for today. And I did put my email in, and I will try to either send the whole document through WhatsApp, or I'll see if I separate them week per week. I don't know how that'll work out, but either way, you'll get the information that I've referenced, today. So unless you email me, I'm not going to go through and write down these emails. Forgive me, but I will. Okay, because I will respond to the email, but I'm not going to be able to write down. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to write down these emails. So Thank you all for joining us and listening in. I appreciate you. I hope you got some good information. If you read through or you look back through your notes and find that you have questions, please jot them down and put them in the chat for next week, and I'll be sure to try to address those things. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend and a wonderful week in the coming week. Thank you. So, all right, good health and peace to everybody.